want?
I have many names, and I've come to take what is mine.
So let's talk cosmic horror. Let's talk about a horror movie set in the deep darkness of space, aboard a spacecraft that encounters demonic forces, you might say. Are we talking Event Horizon? No. We are talking Event Horizon's predecessor, The Dark Side of the Moon. This is actually a 1990 movie, 7 years before Event Horizon, directed by DJ Webster. And this is a somewhat forgotten about movie, but if you have seen Event Horizon, it is surprisingly similar in some ways. Now this focuses on this crew of essentially astronauts. The film is set in 2022, amusingly, and they're basically kind of a crew of repairmen who are sent to kind of repair some sort of missile system which has been in space, which has malfunctioned. And whilst they're kind of in space, they start to kind of get kind of system malfunctions and ultimately start to drift towards the dark side of the moon. Now, to their surprise, they see another craft, and this appears to be a kind of a classic NASA space shuttle from decades previously, sort of coming towards them. And they dock, and then they find the kind of the body of a man who shouldn't really be there. Bring him aboard, and but that's not all they bring aboard, because there is some type of demonic presence. Yes, you heard me right, demonic presence. Now, what's this all about? Has it got a connection to the Bermuda Triangle back on Earth? Well, you'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's talk about The Dark Side of the Moon. I actually saw this back in the VHS days, and I always kind of thought it was a pretty dark and kind of moody sci-fi horror. And having rewatched it for this review, yeah, it still is like that. And you know, having seen both this and Event Horizon, it's surprising how you must think that this movie must have been seen by the makers of Event Horizon. Anyway. So what works? Well, this is like a somewhat forgotten movie in many ways, but it is low budget. It's certainly not up to the production value of the aforementioned Event Horizon, but I've got to say, it's quite a decent, creepy science fiction movie. One of the things that really works in this movie's favour is because we have this kind of, it's all set on kind of two adjoined spacecraft really, but there's not very many places these characters can go. So you have a real sense of claustrophobia and a real sense of like these people really have the back against the walls. I mean, they're drifting off course. Their systems are down. You know, they have this kind of like unknown kind of demonic entity which has kind of infected certainly the kind of like the person that was brought on board in this body, but maybe it can get into other people kind of as well. So it really is like, and they're running out of air, they're running out of like heat. It's kind of like how many things can possibly go wrong for one cast of one movie. So you have this real palpable sense of, you know, danger, impending doom, claustrophobia because of this kind of like close setting and stuff like that. And you really think, man, they are really like up the creek, so to speak. So there is a real sense of tension within the film when you're watching this, because you think, how are they going to, you know, what do they possibly do to kind of get out of this kind of situation? One other thing I really liked is the cinematography. It's a low budget movie, but I mean, I have to say, I think this movie is probably, as much as I think maybe this is like Event Horizon, this is clearly influenced by the likes of The Exorcist and its sequels, I would say, because there's definitely some stylistic choices, you can kind of see from The Exorcist movies. Certainly with I think some of the cinematography and how the demonic elements are kind of played will remind you very much of The Exorcist. Now, this movie kind of plays somewhat subtly with its kind of demon kind of side of things, but I think it works really well. It's a low budget movie, so perhaps this was forced by budget restraints, but the fact that there's not massively kind of like overt monster effects and things like this, but what we do have is very, very creepy, I have to say. And as I said, really plussed by some really fantastic cinematography, making use of the kind of the shadows and things like this. I thought it was done very, very, very well. And there's some fun ideas involving so many things. Like I said, the dark side of the moon, science fiction ideas. We have this kind of android, a little bit like Galaxina. You know, we've got the demonic ideas. We've got, you know, incorporating the Bermuda Triangle, the dark side of the moon. So there's quite a lot kind of going on here. It's a relatively small cast, so I think do a pretty good job. If we you know, I don't think anyone's necessarily outstanding. This is not trying to go for high drama necessarily. It is a somewhat schlocky movie, but I think the cast all did a pretty good job here to make sort of compelling characters, you know. And what I like it does, it kind of gives you, you know, who's going to be the creep and things like this. Who's going to be the kind of the upstanding thing, the upstanding type of crew, and we have this added drama where when people start to kind of catch on about what's going on, there's this sense of kind of paranoia, and you know, who can you trust between the kind of the crew and things like this. So I thought the themes of the movie and some of the kind of just the general kind of feeling of the film was very well done to make it a genuinely kind of dramatic, creepy and quite horrifying movie without ever being particularly kind of like overt with horror elements. That being said, there is a couple of good gore sequences in particular where one crew member gets their face pushed into like an massive open wound on another person's kind of body and kind of their head sort of swallowed into their torso. So that's pretty good. What doesn't work in this movie, I think, to be honest, a lot of the criticisms I'll probably have are down to budgetary reasons and time frame reasons, because some of this stuff is unfortunately clearly lack of budget. I mean, there's no like loss of gravity, for example, in either of these kind of spacecraft. It's, you know, we just have to accept people are kind of walking around. It's never addressed. These spacecraft seem way too kind of spacious, and things like this, particularly the kind of the you know, the space shuttle, the craft they find out there. You know, it just seems like massive compared to you know, what it would really kind of be like and things like this. And some of the kind of the set design in regards to these kind of like the rooms within this kind of sort of spaceship just seem, you know, not particularly kind of practical, and it just seems like they haven't gone for the kind of the realistic approach here, which is a shame because the subject matter is so, you know, it takes itself very seriously, and it's just, it looks hokey in some visual aspects. You know, they're sort of smoking on the kind of the space shuttle and things like this, and you know, the set design and the kind of the way this kind of like these spaceships are sort of set out internally. It's just like, it looks like someone's desk in an office and things like that. Which a lot of it is probably down to, like I say, I think probably budget and kind of lack of time in regards to, you know, how this kind of movie was kind of put out. But there you go. There are also some ideas that I think just don't work at all. For example, we have this, the ship's computer is like a human-looking female android, but she serves no purpose because she literally just sits in a seat all day, the whole movie, and just kind of says stuff. You could have just had a computer. You didn't need it to be like a human-looking female that doesn't do anything outside of sit in a chair. And that looks kind of like, you know, you're looking like Barbarella. Then it's like, it looks a little bit hokey compared to the kind of the seriousness like of the rest of the film to a certain degree. So although I think the themes and the storyline here are pretty good and kind of quite kind of taken seriously, albeit, you know, we have like, you know, gunfights and stuff in the ship, and it's a little bit, again, it's a little bit silly and stuff. You know, there are some design elements here that I think work against it. I mean, again, it's a movie that came out in 1990. It was made in 1989. You know, it maybe suffers from that kind of that 80s kind of like just sort of campy silliness that maybe we had in some films, but you know, it doesn't really suit some of the tone of the film. And again, it's just some of the kind of like the costume design, the kind of like what these guys look like in regards to their sort of hair and hairstyles and stuff. Again, it's just kind of like the visual representation of certain kind of set, costume, makeup, all that kind of stuff. I don't think is really particularly kind of on point. It's a little bit kind of confused plot-wise. I think it more or less makes sense, but you might be thinking you don't quite know, you know, the reasons why certain things are happening necessarily. But I think it mostly kind of makes sense. You know, for the most part at least. But if you like, you know, if you like Event Horizon and you don't mind a lower budget movie, I would seriously check this one out, because it is a great companion piece to Event Horizon, which obviously has the production and gloss behind it. But this is a largely forgotten about film. I think it's also called Parasite in some markets as well. So I actually think this is a pretty good movie, and hampered just by the budget and the time that it was made. So it's a 7 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.